Wait, Sam, you're telling me you can hold your breath for 10 minutes?
Yeah. On nitrox.
Well, I guess we're going to uncover that today on this episode of the Ugly Diving Podcast. So, welcome everyone. If everyone's kind of interested why we're in a f***ing wetsuit, it's because my producers kind of told me that it would be a cool look. He's comfortable in shorts and a t-shirt, but here we are in suits.
I want to be in a wetsuit, man.
You want to be wet?
I'm ready to dive anytime.
Right, awesome. Let's go. Today we have with us Sam. He's an amazing friend of mine. Why not you let him introduce himself because, he's the man of the hour.
What the f***? Hey, I'm Sam. Hey guys, I'm a freediving instructor. I teach PFI, freediving materials. I'm also the chief trainer for PFI. And I like to dive deep, look at wrecks and all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, what's the main difference between free diving and scuba diving? I think that's one of the key questions that everyone here is kind of interested to know.
Oh, we don't breathe.
You don't breathe.
Yeah.
What do you mean by
air is overrated? Compressed air is for tires.
Oh, okay. So we're gonna introduce that kind of stuff now. Maybe let's talk about the basics of freediving, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And what's the difference? Because I understand that you don't breathe, but I'm sure, wouldn't that give you anxiety underwater?
So, let's simplify it a little bit. Let's just say, why would you freedive instead of scuba diving? Right?
Yep, sure.
Right. I think that's a good starting point to find out what the difference between the two is. So the reason why I freedive instead of scuba dive is because I can rock up to any dive site in the world with this and with this, and I can dive it, right? And my range is a lot more than a recreational scuba diver. Let's say if the wreck sits at 50 meters, with this and this, I can dive it. I don't have to find trimix, heliotrox, that kind of shit. I don't have to have $20,000 worth of gear and find a gas fill station and then have to do a 2-hour decompression stop or some bullshit like that just to go to 50 meters. I can do it in 2-3 minutes,
Okay, then you mentioned that you hold your breath for 2-3 minutes. Is it something that's very possible for the average Joe at home watching this?
Yeah, 2-3 minutes is actually quite short. Static wise, you take your first course, most people will achieve 2 to 3 minutes at least for their first freediving course.
Well, actually, just as a matter of reference, right? How long can you hold it?
I think the longest I've held it was about 5:30.
And this is static?
Yes, it's static.
Before, all the gas mixture shit that you've been toying
before
with.
all the gas mixture shit. For gas mixture shits, I think we've tested 50% to about 8 or 9 minutes.
And that's comfortable?
Yeah, super comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have asked me this, and I think only a professional like you can actually answer it properly. Will we run out of oxygen when we hold our breath?
Just some general benchmarking rules here. Now, of course, everybody's different, so don't take this as law. But if you hold your breath to about 2 minutes for the average human being, your oxygen saturation, which is the amount of oxygen in your blood, will still be above 90%, which is very far from the blackout zone. But because of the carbon dioxide, most people will give up, right?
Right.
Another benchmark rule you can think of is in terms of you to actually run out of oxygen for an untrained person, once again, differs from people to people, you would have to hold your breath to 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So you talked about the blackout zone. So is 5 minutes the blackout zone or?
It's not really the blackout zone. The blackout zone is a oxygen saturation thing. So 50% or under oxygen saturation on your blood. That's your blackout zone. Now, for an untrained person, it could be around 5 minutes.
So maybe you want to explain a bit more about what's this blackout zone? Because, for one, I was taught by you, but I still don't, kind of understand this blackout zone concept as well as you.
Basically, once your oxygen level drops below a certain percentage, your body will not have enough oxygen to continue to function.
Okay.
So you cease to function.
So I cease to function
Yes.
means
Yeah, all right. You don't die, you black out. So your body will shut off everything as an oxygen preservation mechanic, right? So to just prioritize the oxygen going to your important organs like your brain and your heart and your lungs, right? So it'll shut off all other functions. Okay. After you have a full blackout, then it'll take about maybe 2 to 3 minutes to actually start having brain death in your head.
So let's just reset as well. Let's not talk about brain death.
Yeah.
But how did you start freediving and what made you fall in love with it?
Okay, so long story. I used to spend a lot of time when I was younger sailing in the Whitsunday Islands.
Okay.
So I would go there every year with my family to sail around the island. So it's not like a guided boat tour or anything, right? So we go there, we rent a sailboat, and we drive the boat and decide where we want to go. A lot of the times you end up in bays with nothing to do.
Okay.
Right, and you look in the water and you'd be like, I wonder what's down there. So I just jumped in and I started swimming down into the water, and that's basically how I started. Just diving to the bottom of these bays that I'm docked in.
So how deep are these bays?
10, 20 meters around there.
Don't you have to equalize or something underwater?
So funny story, right? Because I started freediving completely untrained.
Oh, okay. Right? Are you sure this is supposed to be
Well, I mean, a lot of people start untrained because I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't know there were freediving courses. I was just bored on a boat.
Okay.
Right. So I didn't know I had to equalize.
You didn't know? You would feel the pressure once you hit the water.
I don't know I didn't know what the fuck equalization was.
Okay.
I was a kid, right?
Right.
So I remember I would dive down all the time and it would hurt like shit.
It would hurt?
It would hurt like shit, yeah. For quite a bit of the first few dives that I did. Right? I remember especially at 10 meters, it would hurt a lot.
Okay.
Right. One of the days I just dived down. I went to 10 meters. It was a 10-meter dive. I still remember exactly what happened. And I went there and I flexed something in my throat and I heard a loud squeak sound and then the pain went away.
So basically you're Aquaman or like a superhero now?
Basically, I dove until the pain went away. Now, that is not advice to anyone.
Okay, so wait. So before we get this straight, how old were you when you were doing this?
I wasn't that young. I was maybe 14.
14?
Yeah.
So you're telling me at 14 years old, you decided to jump into water and persisted until it stopped hurting?
Well, I thought it was supposed to hurt until it stopped hurting. And then I realized it wasn't supposed to hurt.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and honestly, I think that's one of the, as far as equalization questions goes, that's one of the myths about hands-free equalization, right? If you notice, a lot of hands-free divers, they have to learn it naturally, right? If you look at the bajau, the spearfishing, what do you call it? Nomads of the Philippines, right? All of them are hands-free, right? The AMA divers, they're all hands-free as well, right? Because they don't have this concept of equalization in their head.
So wait,
they just dive down until the pain goes away. Don't do that.
Let me just stop you right there. Maybe you can just explain to the audience what is hands-free.
Hands-free essentially is where you don't have to pinch your nose to equalize. I'm sure as if you take your paddy, open water, or whatever it is, they tell you, pinch your nose, blow into it, and it'll clear the equalization. For hands-free, we don't pinch our nose at all. What we do is we flex the soft palate in the back of our mouth, right? And when we flex this soft palate, it'll pull the tissues open and it'll open up our eustachian tubes. Once the eustachian tubes are opened up, you have two air spaces, the one in your nasal cavity and the one in your, your middle ear.
Okay.
When it opens up, it sucks in the air from your nasal cavity into your middle ear, causing it to auto-equalize.
So, I mean, after this episode, if people that are viewing this, how can they, get properly trained?
Well, first thing is always find school first. Don't go diving, by yourself like me. Sure, I did that, but it's not the smartest thing for your safety. Get certified first. So there's a bunch of schools in Singapore, but I think the most important thing to find out from the school is if they teach Frenzo equalization. Because to be completely honest with you, failure rates for freediving level 1 course, probably about 50%.
Okay, so if I'm a scuba
just
diver...
due to equalization, yes.
Oh, just due to equalization?
Just due to equalization, not because of anything else.
I know I've been through the course, but as a scuba diver, or if the student is a scuba diver, is it more frustrating to teach them because they have certain set of skills that it goes against freediving, or is it easier?
That's a good point. I actually have quite a lot of experience teaching tech divers to freedive.
Okay. And?
It is quite hard, yes.
And is it because of the equalization that you mentioned
So the equalization
earlier?
is one thing. Another thing is their finning technique.
Finning technique?
Yes.
Okay.
So tech divers use the modified flutter kick or the modified frog kick.
Okay.
Right? So very oftentimes their legs will be very bent in a very unstreamlined position. It's not the same kick we use for freediving. So I have students that go down a line and I'll tell them to flutter kick, and they're doing this, trying to go down. And of course, they're not going down because there's not much propulsion.
Right.
And then equalization is another thing. A lot of scuba divers, and I've taught some instructors as well, they think, I've already been to, 30, 40, whatever meters they've been to, and I've equalized fine. It'll be easy for me. And then boom, they get stuck at 5 meters. Because equalization is a completely different game for freediving than it is for scuba diving. Equalization for scuba is very easy because you're always on the same lung volume, same amount of air that you have at all times, right? Because you're always constantly breathing. So the volume of air is the same. For freediving, because we hold our breath, every meter we go, the volume of air decreases.
Okay.
So equalization is a big issue. Yeah.
So there is absolutely no benefit from being a scuba diver into a freediver, or?
I mean, there is some, like just being comfortable in the water is good. But as far as crossovers, the most easiest students to teach, in my opinion, are swimmers. Swimmers, yes. Because swimmers have very good flutter kicking technique, which is the one we use for freediving. Experienced swimmers also have very good dolphin kicking technique, which we use for monofin freediving, like here, right? And they're comfortable in the water, they're agile, they know how to move. With scuba divers, some of them can be a little more rigid, and I think especially with how scuba divers are trained now, I'm not knocking anyone in particular, but with how they're trained in this current industry, it's very like faster, here's your cert and go. And they're not trained well, they are tense, and they over rely on their equipment.
Earlier, you mentioned that you don't really need much equipment, right?
Yep.
So besides masks and like fins, I mean, we're in wetsuits. Is the wetsuits the same or different?
As far as the wetsuit goes, honestly, at a recreational level, it's all marketing gimmicks.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what you wear. You could show up in your undies, But as for why specifically they're marketed differently, so freediving wetsuits do have some different qualities. As you can see, my wetsuit is nice and shiny. Yours is a little more matte. That's because we use smooth skin. These glides through the water easier. There's a lot less friction. And also, we want to make sure that the wetsuits are nice and stretchy and flexible because we need to be able to take that full breath before we go. If it's constricting us, right, we won't be able to really maximize that full breath before we start the dive.
I see.
Yeah.
But I just want to talk a bit more about like how maybe a scuba diver can be more prepared if they want to take up freediving. What's the stuff that they can work on at home?
The most important thing is equalization.
Okay.
Right. They have to learn Frenzel. They cannot rely on Valsava and think, I've done it before, it will work. It won't work. They'll get stuck. Right?
Okay.
And even in some cases, if they're hands-free, I've taught hands-free scuba divers before. That does not work at all for freediving. Once again, it's the same issue. It's because of the air constraint, right? So equalization first, and then finning technique next. A huge misconception is to put all your training hours into breath hold time. That should not be done at all. Breath hold time is usually the easiest to train to a recreational usable level. To be able to actively freedive, breath hold is the easiest to train. It's so easy, right? I'm sure you know as well, you experienced it during your course, how much longer you held your breath just in 10 minutes?
Yeah, right? So it was quite amazing how the whole process was. You mentioned a bit about myth just now.
Yeah.
I want to debunk some of these myths because obviously I don't think you're the eat, pray, love kind of person.
There's a lot
right?
of them. I'm going to get cancelled for this. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, so what's the top 5 myths that you heard?
Ooh, 5.
Okay, wait. What's your favorite myth that you want to debunk today?
That's a really good question. One that comes to my mind straight away is this idea of hook breathing for recovery breathing. Now, this is very controversial.
Whoa, okay, explain a bit more.
So if you take any freediving course, all the materials, they will tell you hook breathing is essential to save your life if you're hypoxic. So hook breathing is this, right? And then they hold it for 3 seconds. Hook breathing is essentially what fighter pilots do when they're making sharp G-turns in the sky to stay conscious.
Okay, because we're a podcast, can you just do it for the ASMR into the mic for me?
Right? Because so for fighter pilots, they make a hook sound when they do it. So they go right? You've heard that, right? You know Top Gun, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So what they're doing is they're increasing blood pressure to move blood to the brain, because when they're flying around high Gs, blood is being pulled away from their brain.
Okay.
Right? But in freediving, this is not entirely the case.
Okay.
Blood is still going to your brain after a dive. It's just low oxygenated. So if you hook breathe, you're just increasing blood pressure in your brain with low oxygenated blood. So in my opinion, the most effective way to recover should just be prioritizing oxygen intake.
Right.
The problem with these hook breaths to me is that they have a 3-second hold in them. That means after you've done your entire long dive, you come up, you hook breathe, right? We should be trying to maximize oxygen intake into our lungs. So once again, super controversial. None of the what do you call it? Certification materials will agree with me on this, and they all come to this conclusion from one study. There's been a scientific study on hook breathing, in case anyone wants to call me out, and I've read this study, and it's not a well done study. It's the sample size was tiny, right, and the results were very mixed. Sure, it leaned to favor of hook breathing, but the process was just a mess for that particular study.
So I think one of the biggest myths that I've actually come across is that if you're a free diver, for maximum results, right, you probably need to, be a bit more zen, do some meditation, do some yoga. How is that like? What do you have to say about that?
If you intend on being a free diver in order to see things and explore the ocean, you cannot always have this mindset with you, because when you're exploring the ocean, things are dynamic. They're constantly changing. Now, I'm not going to knock the Zen guys, right? As in not Zen freediving the school, but like the guys who are into meditation and all that. There is certain benefits to that, purely from the fact that the less you think, the less your brain consumes oxygen, and your brain uses 20% of the body's oxygen. Understanding relaxation is important. Do you have to go to the point of doing yoga and meditation and all that in order to enjoy your free dive? No, right? Because when you are in the open water and you're swimming around, your brain has to be active and able to respond to situations all the time, right? Most freedivers nowadays, to be completely frank with you, are primarily line divers. So they don't have to be able to think about this. This is more for spearfishers or underwater photographers. For most freedivers, they dive up and down a line. So everything's very nice, safe, secured. They have a safety diver, they're land yada to the line. So they can really close their eyes, focus, on meditating and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay.
And
so
like closing the world out.
So just to summarize very quickly, you're saying that all these Zen like freedivers are mainly because they're on a line and they're in a safe environment and they just want to concentrate on their personal best.
Yes, they want to maximize performance as much as possible.
But then there's also another aspect to freediving where you explore.
Yeah, so which I think is what draws most people to the sport. But sadly, after they get drawn to the sport, I think a lot of people do transition to line freediving. So just because of how courses are built nowadays.
I see.
Yeah.
And then, back to myths, right? Do you have any other myths that you kind of want to debunk today?
Well, as a blanket debunking, let me just say this. A lot of freediving practices and ideas are pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right, there's, I wouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them are, because it would be unethical to experiment with many of these ideas on divers, right?
Okay.
So a lot of times it's guesswork, and the most important thing I can say to anyone aspiring to be a freediver or any freedivers out there is find what works for you. Don't say this guy or my manual said X, so it has to be X, because some other people may say Y, and Y may work better for you. None of these organizations know 100% whether they're right or not.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest questions that I have is that when I go scuba diving, right, and I go too deep, because you mentioned earlier that you go up to 40, 50, 60 meters even, right? Is that like we have something that we call nitrogen narcosis. Do
Yep.
freedivers have that as well?
I get it too. I get it in the late 68s to 70s.
Oh, that's sick. But okay.
Yeah. Mine is fairly mild. Some people don't get it at all. Like at that depth. We have this weird hypothesis amongst freedivers is that the more you drink, the less susceptible you are to nitrogen narcosis.
Really?
Yes, and I don't drink at all.
Oh, you don't drink at all?
I don't drink at all. Yeah. So
okay,
that is one of the guesses as to nitrogen narcosis tolerance. But yes, we do get it. When I get it, it's fairly mild. I can't speak for other people. It's a very happy feeling. It's like being drunk.
Like how I'm listening, like I'm having it now with this
hood on. You want to take the hood off? Yeah. Take it off.
One eternity later.
One thing that's always like kind of interest me, or like I'm curious about, right, is that because as scuba divers, we collect all these memories of all the best experiences, right? For you, I'm sure freediving is so quick. I would say quick compared to a dive, which is like an hour, right? But what's your greatest freediving experience?
That's a really good question. My greatest freediving experience.
Yes.
I don't think I have a singular greatest freediving experience.
Okay, that's
completely fair.
Yeah.
But every time I dive deep, if I do deep exploration, I think I remember all those dives.
You remember
all those dives. Specifically for deep exploration, right?
Okay.
Because being down, let's say 40 or 50 meters, whatever it is, that deep, with your lungs that small, and in the vastness of the ocean, you feel different.
Okay.
And especially because you're not scuba, you're so agile, you can move around really quickly. It feels like, it feels like something different. It doesn't feel like you're on the sea anymore, actually.
That's interesting.
It doesn't even feel like you're on the water. You kind of forget you're holding your breath too.
You kind of forget you're holding your breath.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, then, a lot of people argue, especially in the scuba world, right? There's nothing much to see after 40 meters. I mean, you're a person that's come back from, past 40 many times. What do you usually look out for underwater past 40?
Free shit.
Free shit. Like, okay.
Here's a tip and trick for you.
Okay.
If you can dive deep, like as a free diver, you can get a lot of free shit. Because if you go to any popular scuba dive site, so one of the dive sites I used to go to a lot was the USNS Vandenberg of Florida, because I used to live there. It's about 50 meters at the bottom. I think it's 45, 50, something like that.
Okay.
Right? So most of the scuba divers don't go that deep. But when you go to 50 meters or 45, whatever it is, at the bottom, there's so much free shit down there. Masks, snorkels, weights.
So amongst all these...
I found a ladder down there.
A ladder?
Yeah.
Okay. But then amongst all these free shit that you've got, right, what's the most valuable to you? Or what's the most expensive? I've heard stories of scuba divers finding Rolexes and stuff.
Well,
what's your most expensive find?
Honestly, I've never made like a nice anything nicer than like fucking a mask or a snorkel or some shit, But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really in it for the treasure hunting. It's just cool to see, Okay, putting me on the spot here, man.
No, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't find 6 GoPros like like whoever the hell did.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Okay, that aside, I think like freediving is undeniably like more popular today thanks to like all the Netflix stuff. But I want to hear from a freediver instructor and like someone who practice it. Like, why do you think that's the case?
Honestly, to tell you the truth, I am a little miffed myself.
Okay,
yeah,
let's hear it.
Because even though I am a freediving instructor and I introduce myself as a freediver, sometimes I don't feel like I'm one. So I can't really say that I know what they're thinking. Because, okay, let me just put it this way. Most freedivers start out freediving because they want to explore the ocean. Then after they get their first certification course, and I would say most freedivers, they start getting into this training mentality where they see numbers.
Right.
So it'll be either dynamic pool training. Oh, I want to swim X amount of distance in the pool. I want to increase my static X distance, right? And then when they go overseas, they go to a beautiful dive spot, like let's say like Panglao or some stuff, right? And they go there and they just dive up and down a line.
Right.
So as far as why it's popular, why it gained popularity is just because of, it looks nice underwater, it looks fun underwater. As far as a continuing sport, I don't particularly understand it myself.
Right.
Because sure, I did my fair share of line diving, obviously, because that's how you learn how to go deep, right? But I'm primarily an exploration diver myself, so I can't say. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of like the Netflix free diving show is pretty popular, and there's a few that's popping up as well.
Yeah.
Are these like, like 47 meters below? We all know that as a scuba diver, we all know that some of the stuff that is shown is unrealistic. Do you think these like Netflix shows or these shows actually help the sport, or do they do more harm than good?
I think they help the sport in the sense that it would get some people interested in trying the sport. But once again, it depends on the documentary you're talking about. Because let's talk about like the latest Netflix documentary. What was it called? The Deeper what?
No idea. I haven't watched it myself, but
Jamie, pull it up.
Sure.
What's the name of the documentary? I was right. The Deepest Breath.
The Deepest Breath.
Yeah, okay. So, like, if it's The Deepest Breath, right? The Deepest Breath is a very competition-oriented documentary.
So like what you were saying, like how everyone gets into the competition mode. So this is the one that people get into after exploration.
If you're asking me, yeah, well, they get into this kind of diving. They don't even go into the exploration phase because the exploration phase is not included in most of the courses.
Oh, okay.
I'll be straight with you, most certified free divers have no idea how to buddy in open water without a line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I picked up free diving because I simply wanted to shoot underwater, and I just felt like after my South Africa trip, right, I was like, oh shit, like I can't scuba dive because the creatures are so quick. So I need to get in and out of the water within seconds.
Yeah.
The only way that I could actually keep up with these creatures was that I would have to free dive, and that's why I kind of picked it up.
Yeah.
So, it's a very different route that I took.
Yeah.
And would you want to encourage anyone to follow this route, or would you? And because you're an instructor yourself,
I still think you should get certified first. But firstly, figure out what the safety protocols are for an online free diving.
Okay.
That's the most important thing, right? Because without line makes it, when you explore without line, free diving truly becomes the extreme sport that people say it is.
Yep.
Right? So it's different from diving line. So firstly, figure out what the safety protocols are. Now, there's very few places you can figure it out. One of the few places you can figure it out is the PFI manual, right? Because PFI teaches non-line exploration. Most other certifications do not. Okay. But yeah, honestly, there's not much I can say other than that, to be honest.
Okay. I mean, like after my certification, I've never dove on a line. Yeah. So for me, I thought it was quite interesting because if I'm out chasing, for example, I'm not chasing whales, but like if I want to have a whale encounter, usually the surges are really, really crazy, and you probably lose your buddy most of the time. Is there like something that you probably need to learn before doing that, or is there anything that you can advise people like myself?
As far as high current situations, it would only be advisable if you have a boat, and the boat will reposition with you along the current, of course. If you do not have that, I do not advise you free diving in high current situations.
Right. Okay.
Because even some of the greatest free divers in the world have died because of high current free diving situations, right? World champion Natalia Molchanova. She's guessed to have died disappearing underneath from an undercurrent.
Yeah.
She was diving without a line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as things you should do, firstly, make sure your finning technique is good. Mm-hmm. Right? You want a strong, efficient kick if you want to go against current. If you have to go against current. Otherwise, I would recommend you just drift with the current and have the boat reposition for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. The boatman and everyone should be experienced.
And as far as safety wise, right? Depending on visibility, I do recommend that you have a float line to a torpedo buoy. So more similar to spearfishers. Now, if you want to know how safety protocols can be done, look at the spearfishers,
Right. Okay.
not the line freedivers, if you're interested in exploring.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're not only here just to talk about the present, but like the future as well. What does like the future look like for freediving?
Honestly, I think freediving is not as interesting as it was in the old days.
Okay.
To be completely honest, as in terms of where it is going, right? Not what you can do in it, right?
Right.
So right now, freediving has kind of settled into this line diving mindset, right? Sure, even if you're not interested in competition, whatever, but most divers who are not interested in competition are still doing line dives because they, I don't know, want to feel themselves or feel one with the water, whatever it is, right? But and I see it increasingly going in that direction because all the certifications that are coming up are all more line-based than anything else. If you look back in the old days of freediving when it was more Wild West, it was a lot more experimental. There was still a lot more of exploration involved, and there was a lot more, funny ideas. And it was interesting. It kept it fresh. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do this. Now, like, if you want to break down a depth free dive, is so simple, right? Oh, I fin to 30 meters, or I free fall to the bottom, or I make a nice turn, I fin up, right? My finning speed should be 1 meters per second. That's the entire freediving experience in the current culture, which is good for training, but as far as something to do for fun, it's not really something I enjoy, and that's the direction it's going in, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
We discussed a lot of things today. I think overall, I hope the audience, you guys have actually learned a thing or two, because
I don't think I taught the audience anything.
But I mean, it's just the experience. I've learned a lot of shit. Like, even though I've went through the course, there's so many things that are still very fresh for me.
Yeah.
And I love like how you broke down, how freediving is going, and like how we should encourage to be like more free and wild, I guess. Like,
I wouldn't say we should
way.
encourage. Yeah, we should encourage teaching them safety in a non-line setting.
Yeah.
Because either way, they're still going to dive without a line anyways.
Correct.
Right?
So, like, if you have one thing to take away, or what people watching this or listening in, what would that one thing be to take away from today?
Specifically about freediving, if you want to do it, get certified first, and make sure you learn Frenzo equalization.
Yeah, I guess that's about it for today. I hope to catch you on the next episode, and hopefully there'll be different topics as well that we can discuss.
Sure, sick.
For those, back at home, if you guys have a topic that you want us to cover or a guest that you want us to bring on, just let us know in the comments below. And as usual, just share, like, and subscribe. All right, I'll see you in the next one.